as Kent's noted, ooh, I'm a little hot this morning. The Memorial Day came primarily from the early 1800s after the Civil War, decorating the graves of soldiers who had been killed to sort of honor them, like I say, both from the North and the South. And it's been changed quite a bit over the years, as Kent's related to, about how the meaning and how it was celebrated and all. But in any case, what we're doing is remembering. And I thought about that this week as I was preparing this, about memories and remembering and being aware. The front of our communion table, this do in remembrance of me. Memories are a strong part of our awareness of people who we have known, who have gone before us. I tell people oftentimes when I do a funeral service that we keep them with us in our memory, in our awareness, and it's good to have those memories and to ponder and to think about that. And then taking that a step further, I began to think, well, what is it that I would be remembered for? You know, what in the years to come, how would I be remembered? And we look at these Memorial Day sacrifices that was made, and remember the events and the people and what they accomplished and the things they did. And in the book of Joshua, all the way back in Joshua chapter 4, there's a passage that speaks of a memorial set up for the Lord and how it affected the nation. In Joshua chapter 4, verse 1, now it came about when all the nation had finished crossing the Jordan that the Lord spoke to Joshua, saying, take for yourselves 12 men from the people, 1 man from each tribe, and command them, saying, take up for yourselves 12 stones from here in the middle of the Jordan, from the place where the priest's feet are standing firm, and carry them over with you, and lay them down in the lodging place where you will lodge tonight. So Joshua called the 12 men whom he had appointed from the sons of Israel, 1 man from each tribe. And Joshua said to them, cross again to the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan, and each of you take up a stone on his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Israel. Let this be a sign among you, so that when your children ask later, saying, what do these stones mean to you? You shall say to them, because the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord, when it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall be a memorial to the sons of Israel forever. And thus the sons of Israel did as Joshua commanded, and took up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, just as the Lord had spoke to Joshua, according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Israel. And they carried them over with them to the lodging place and put them down there. Then Joshua set up 12 stones in the middle of the Jordan at the place where the feet of the priest that carried the ark of the covenant were standing, and they are there to this day. Memorials are strong visual and emotional symbols. Things that we do. There are many things that are done as a memorial to someone. A lot of the cairns and things like that we see across the world and in places, and like in this place where they set up this memorial with the 12 stones, are all symbolic. They represent something. They point to something. And it's good to have these visual representations. Many places are named memorial something, you know, coliseums and battlefields and all the museums, anything, memorial this, memorial that. And they're visual representations of events. They are to remind us or to serve as a focus point for that which had occurred. They are how, whenever you're there, when you're experiencing that, you're supposed to be going back to that and having an awareness of that. And this is the case that the Lord's talking about here. This will be a memorial to the fact that I intervened, that I was here, that I served, that I was a part. So in our lives, the memorial that we leave is a representation, oftentimes not physically, because most of us aren't going to have monuments made for us. We're not going to have statues made for us. We're not going to have buildings named after us necessarily. But we leave a legacy nevertheless. And that legacy is what is imparted to the people that we have encountered during our life. We all leave a memorial. It's just a matter of what it is. And if we think of some of our relatives, our friends possibly that have gone on before us, our memorial to them is that awareness, is that memory. So, as I was thinking about that this week, and what impact that had, how important it was, and I began to think, maybe we should be a little aware of the memorial that we're leaving, that we're building. What we are leaving to those that have come behind us. How will we be remembered, and in what capacity? Whenever I do a funeral for someone, it's a real, especially for people I don't know that well, for folks that I know well and are family or someone that it's fairly easy because I have an awareness of their person and I can relate stories or in situations. But I've been called a few times to do services for people I really didn't know. And it's a dangerous path to follow when you do that. Because as you talk to family members or you talk to people that knew them, you kind of have to filter everything you hear, because oftentimes you'll hear different stories from different people and different legacies based on their awareness. And so you kind of have to think, okay, nobody's quite that bad and nobody's quite that good, and you have to be a little careful. But all those things point to me to what we leave behind, how people perceive us, what will be our legacy, our memorial. And so we're going to talk just a few minutes about that this morning, of what we are leaving for folks to remember us by. I think it's important as believers that we leave a legacy of belief, a legacy of faith. In Hebrews chapter 11 it says, without faith it's impossible to please God. So how will those who come behind us remember us for our faith? Will we be remembered as those who had confidence and assurance in what the Lord had given to us? Would we be remembered for those who had a confidence in our walk, that proclaimed that faith in about everything that we say and do? Our level of fervency, our level of activity in the kingdom's work. There's a lot of folks who have been distantly associated with Christianity, with the faith, and they are sort of on the fringe, and they were aware, but they were never totally involved in their life, and to be remembered oftentimes doesn't have a lot of fill-in, a lot of substance to it. So I hope, will be remembered as those who had a fervor for the things of God, who had a passion for the things of God, who were urgent about learning and carrying out what the Lord had given to us. We're called to be active in the faith, not just recipients of grace and mercy, but then to live that life out in the face of the ones around us. So we have this landmark, or this foundation of faith from which we live our lives. And oftentimes this is what people will remember of us, is how that's lived out, because the tangible things are at best temporary, and oftentimes the tangible is the object of quarrels and discussions and hurt feelings and all these things of who got what to whom. we've all been involved in situations where the tangible created obstacles. So those things are transient. They come and they go. They exist and then they no longer exist. But the thing that's the essence of who we are, how that's remembered, is critical, as that cannot change. That's what we leave with people to carry for them for the rest of their life. And that is what they will then share with their children's children. Because that's what Joshua says is, tell your children this. What we leave, hopefully, is what our children will share with their children and their children. I know stories about my family that I don't even know, about my grandparents that I never even knew, but I know them through what was shared. The memorial, if you'll see where I'm going with this, that was made to them in memory, in their stories and what was talked about them. In my family, that's not always good. There was some blips in the radar, so to speak. But that was the legacy that they left. So what are we leaving to be memorialized in? Not tangibly, but in what we leave for our descendants. This landmark of faith and of the fruit that was produced in our life. What comes about as a result of our having lived. We all, I think, want to have an impact. We want to have lived our life in some way that mattered. And nothing that we do has more matter to it than the eternal. We can have all kinds of tangible things that we've accomplished, but the legacy that we leave that leads to eternity is far greater. So that is what I think would be great to foster, to be aware of what I'm leaving to those that were behind me. Our legacy and our remembering the faith that we have. Secondly, we remember, or hopefully, the behavior of those that came before us. And every day we model who we are. And we talked about this for about 4 or 5 weeks on living a life worthy of recognition and worthy of someone following us and worthy of someone repeating who we are. And that's a pretty high bar in a lot of ways. But what will those that come after us remember us as being committed to, as being involved in? What behaviors will they remember? Again, going back to my family, there are many, we can name people in our family and you automatically know that you're talking about their temper or their behavior or their faith or their faithfulness just by the calling of their name. And that's who we are. People remember this with us. How will we be remembered for being committed to making a godly home, for being remembered for living out the faith, for having the walk that people will look to and say, thus goes a believer, thus goes a follower of the Lord, a consistency in our lives. In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, it says, therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, for as much as ye know that ye labor not in vain for the Lord. Be ye steadfast. How solid is our faith? How solid is our walk? What do people see in us? And it's easy for me and for others to say, well, don't follow me, don't be, use me as the model. Why not? That's what we're called to be, is to be witnesses, and we're called to be the proclaimers. And it's kind of diminishing if we're not willing to be the one that others should follow. If you have a skill or a task, and you do something well, you want someone to be able to see that, to recognize that. And I know in the things that I do, you know, when I'm remodeling cars or different things that I'm involved with, I'm kind of, not the greatest, but I'm not the worst. I'm sort of in the middle, so I'm a little reluctant to say to someone, look at this, because I'm afraid of the criticism. I'm afraid of, oh, that's not quite good enough. So therefore I shirk away from proclaiming that, look what I have done. In our lives, we should not be fearful of that scrutiny. Our lives should be lived in a way that others would see Him in us. Our memorial is what we leave behind. The memorial of faith, of behavior, of fervency, of grace lived out under pressure. It's easier to have good memories of people that you don't know. It really is. The people that you see intermittently, you see in church, or you see in controlled situations. I remember when I was young, you know, you don't have a lot of authority figures. We lived in a very small world in Crossmore. Even though it was the center of the known universe, it was still a small world. And the preacher, and maybe the Sunday school teacher, and your teachers in school were like your biggest authority figures. And I remember the first time I saw a teacher outside of school, like in the store or something. I thought, what are they doing here? You know, they don't belong here. That's like real people stuff. We have this visual of them, and if we don't know them, it's easy to really hold them to a high regard. But we should not be afraid of being known as we are known. Because then that is, we live out that life in reality. And people see us, and they know that even in the difficulty, even in problems, even in the worst situation, their faith is solid. We should hope for and strive for a legacy that shows even under pressure, even in the most difficult situation, His grace was sufficient. It was enough. I carried that in a way that would bring honor to Him. It's difficult to be open like that. It's much easier for folks to see you all dressed up and nice, and it's great and wonderful. I often say that many times if I'm working, we were working on this little MG, trying to get it finished, and yesterday and the day before I was working on the doors. And I don't know if you've ever tried to put a window regulator in an MG, but it's an interesting phenomenon because it's kind of a blind thing. You've got to get all this lined up, and you take it apart and you put it together. There's 5 pivot points, everything's moving, and you're trying to get this together. And the frustration level gets a little high, and your demeanor gets a little harsh. And Cindy's there trying to hold the window in place while I get it in, and she's getting strangely quiet because I think the feeling that's emanating off of me is not kind at that point. In those moments, that's us. That's who we are. And see, that's where we live out our faith, is in that reality. It's not in this setting. It's not in the prepared, the controlled environment. It's in the world in which we exist. That's where people see us. That is our memorial. That is the consistency of our walk. We have a joke in our family, with Tom's family especially. My brother Tom had just like the rest of us, a wee bit of a temper. And we were cutting and splitting wood one day on Saturday afternoon after everything closed. And the splitter, the Lovejoy connection on the splitter sheared when it caught. So we were out to lunch, nowhere to go get one. Dinner was closed, nowhere to get one. Pretty day, had all these plans. And it come apart, just spinning there, and I'm thinking, oh, this is not going to be good. Tom sat down and the old dog that came over, whose name was Brown Dog, original if not anything else, he said, "Brown Dog, come here." He came over and said, "Well, it's time to pet the dog." And I thought that was the greatest reaction I've ever heard, you know, because it could have been throwing things, hammers, whatever. It's time to pet the dog. So the joke in the family is when something bad happens or you're getting something don't go right, it's time to pet the dog. That's what we leave, are those memories, those things that point to our character, that point to our walk, that point to who we are as believers and what people remember in our lives. So we carry this legacy of faith and of behavior and of representation. What do we represent? What banner do we carry? You know, our kids will remember that you love them because you tried to do things to cause them to love you, or because you authentically love them irregardless. See, will they remember you as that kind person in all things, or only when company was there? Do you people remember when you're working as only doing a good job whenever the boss was around, or someone that busted it every day no matter who was there? See, those are things of character, of substance, that we remember, that people remember about us, as the one who lived life in the fullness, or one who tried to skirt around the edges, who just did enough to get by. Whenever you're working with something, or you buy a product, and you open it up, and it's not made well, or all the pieces aren't there, or you know, it just didn't fit together, or a certain thing is supposed to be threaded and it's not. I always think, that person, I don't know them, never met them before, will never meet them probably, but I thought, they didn't do their job. That is a reflection on their willingness to do or to be. Tom used to always say, something like that, he said, "Well, that's Friday and 4:30. You know, that's all they're working for, Friday and 4:30 for a paycheck. There's no pride. What does that reflect? I want our lives to be such that when people see what we have left, it will be quality. It will be substance. They will look and say, thus walked someone in faith, believing, living it out, not being afraid to be bold in their witness. Will they see us as someone who had a sense of humor, but yet was serious when it came time to be serious? Someone who loved what they did and who encountered the very best, or someone who tried to just do the least possible? See, what we do, what we are, is a memorial to our lives. We leave this life with nothing, as we're very well aware. But we leave behind a great deal. We leave all that we have been while we were alive. We leave our impact upon people. What degree of legacy do we leave to them? What level of understanding of who we are? Whenever we approach death or approach the end of our life, we as believers should leave a legacy that says, I am understanding that I go to another portion, another part, another segment of my existence. I leave this place with sadness because of separation, but I go forth with hope and the glory that is to be. I approach death not with fear. I am fearful, but not filled with fear. I am fearful because it's unknown, but I am not filled with fear because I have hope. I have a confidence that is bold and understanding what the Lord has given to me. So we leave a memorial, each and every one of us, to something. And as we remember today those who have given so much, and we recognize their sacrifice for us, I think that we would be well served to spend a moment also as we go and we place the flags, or we place flowers, or we spend a moment in reflection to reflect on what is my life, what memorial am I building even now, what legacy am I leaving, and what can I do to make it more compatible with who I'm supposed to be as a follower of Christ. What can I do to live my life out more completely? Because we only have a short time here. As Scripture says, the flower grows, it dies, it withers, and cut away. Life is but a vapor, it is just passing. What impact can I make that carries past me to affect those that come after me? What memorial are we building today? Father, we thank you for the day, for everything within it, for loving us so much, for guiding us each and every day. Father, may you be honored as we live our life. May you be honored as we go forth. That you would shine in our lives. That people would see you in us. That they would see that walk of faith. They would see the joy. They would see the witness to all that's been accomplished through you. Father, we give you the praise for it in Christ's name. Amen.